St. Paul's Church, Nova Scotia. The man in the black wool cap looked like a tourist. He sat in a back pew, a missal in his hands. He wore a down jacket and jeans. When Amy and Ian slipped in next to him, he didn't turn. Amy could only see the side of his face. Thin mouth, red beard, thick hands. A gigantic steel watch strapped to one wrist. Just an ordinary-looking guy. Then he turned to scope them out, and she felt her stomach drop. In that brief instant of meeting his eyes, she knew she'd just looked into a person without a soul. A person who trafficked in nuclear weapons, who tested and sold those weapons to rogue nations, dictators, terrorists, just for money. Amy felt fear drop over her like a suffocating hood. She had to force herself to breathe in and out, trying to get a sense of calm in a suddenly rocking world. She felt dizzy. She reminded herself that Hamilton and Dan were nearby, pretending to be tourists with brochures in their hands, checking out the stained glass windows. She regretted choosing this meeting place. They had been looking for a central location. Quiet, but not too quiet. Maybe a few tourists for cover. More than one exit and streets to get lost in if things went wrong. It fit the bill. She didn't realize how terrible this would feel. She'd brought evil into this beautiful, sacred place. Keep your head in the game, Amy. Ian showed no outward sign of nerves. He did the thing that Ian did when he was nervous. He lifted his chin and looked superior. Did nursery school let out? The man's voice was low and flat. I didn't realize I was dealing with a couple of kids. Cahills, Ian said, and I'm the head of the Cahill family. I think you're familiar with our resources? Amy admired Ian's cool. They were in over their heads. Surely he knew it too. I trust you checked out the account numbers we provided, Ian said. Wouldn't be sitting here if I hadn't. I only deal with legitimate clients. Sure, you have the resources, but I'm not in this game to play with children. He made a restless move, as though he was about to rise. We have plenty of information on your activities, Ian said. We know exactly what you do. We know that you run nukes all over the world. No, Amy thought. No, Ian. Too soon. Under the cover of the pew, she pressed her foot against Ian's, telling him to stop. They wouldn't get anywhere threatening Atlas. Ian pressed his back as if to tell her to chill. We know that you're the one to ask about trafficking and weapons, Ian said. We'll pay you for information. You mean sell out my clients? Not necessarily, Ian said. We are interested in just one ship, the Aurora. The Aurora. I've got many ships around the world. Hard to remember each one. Try. I might be familiar with it. It's registered as carrying refrigerators to Suriname. I'm sure the authorities here would be interested to know what's actually in the cargo hold. Don't threaten him, Ian. However, we just want to get aboard. You want to get aboard? Atlas raked Ian with a glance. Ian gave a shrug. We're not interfering with anyone's profit. We just want to have a look at the ship. Why? Keep it simple, Ian. That's not your concern. All we need is for you to smooth the way with your captain. You do know, don't you, that crossing me is something you really don't want to do. The voice was low and even, almost lazy, but Amy didn't have to work to hear the menace in it. We have no intention of crossing you, Ian said. Atlas held Ian's gaze for so long that Amy almost screamed, "Stop!" Then he smiled without humor. He slapped both hands on his thighs and stood up. Then, let's go. Now? Now or never. Bad weather coming. The Aurora is at maximum speed, heading into port. She's 3 days ahead of schedule. We can head out and meet her. I have a boat. You mean you'll pilot the two of us out there? The four of you. Atlas pointed to Dan and Hamilton with his chin. Tell your friends we're leaving. Halifax Harbor, Nova Scotia. Dan zipped his jacket up to his neck. He was only wearing a hoodie underneath, and the wind off the water was like a knife. The temperature seemed to be dropping by the minute, and the sky was lowering. The harbor was flecked with white. Boats chugged in and out. A cool mist beaded up on his eyelashes. Dan could feel the presence of Jonah and Kara following them, but what could they do without a boat? In a silent exchange of looks, Amy, Ian, Hamilton, and Dan had agreed to go along with Atlas. They could be walking into danger, but they had to get on that ship. Dan couldn't imagine another disaster leveling this beautiful city. The number of casualties could be greater even in the blast in 1917. He thought of that little girl with the balloon, skipping away down the street, holding her mother's hand. Something tightened inside him. He wasn't going to back down now. Atlas led them down a dock to a cabin cruiser. He jumped on board and crossed to the pilot's chair. He started the engine without waiting to see if they followed. I don't like this, Ian said softly. It feels iffy. Hamilton agreed. You think? Dan muttered. We're relying on a guy we can't trust and searching a ship full of weapons to see how and when they're going to blow up. What could possibly go wrong? We've all got tracking devices on our phones, Amy said. The others will know where we are, at least, and we don't have a better plan. Ready to cast off? Atlas yelled over the sound of the engine. Or have you changed your minds? Dan hated the sneer on his face. He was the first one to leap onto the deck. Ian and Amy followed. Ham cast off and jumped aboard.